Have you ever looked someone in the eye, listened to their words, watched them smile, and still felt like something was off, as if they were performing a role, one that didn't quite fit? What if I told you, you already know more about people than you think? You just haven't learned to read the signs yet. Because every person, yes, every single one, leaves behind clues. And today we're unlocking 18 psychological truths pulled straight from Nietzsche's most profound insights that will forever change how you see people and yourself. But don't expect a surface-level checklist. This isn't just advice, it's a total shift in perspective, broken down into three powerful interconnected parts. Each one builds on the last. So if you skip ahead, you'll miss the hidden layers, the depth that makes this so effective. Stick with me, because once you learn to see these signs, you won't be able to unsee them. By the end of this video, you won't just understand people more clearly, you'll start to see straight through them, and maybe even straight through yourself. Part 1, the masks we wear. From the moment we're born, we're taught to trust words. Words are how we connect, how we express, how we survive. But Nietzsche warned us, don't be fooled. People rarely speak from truth. They speak from fear, from ego, from survival. What you see on the surface, that's not them. That's their armor. The overly kind person might not be kind, they might be terrified of being disliked. The strong, confident type might be silently crumbling inside. And here's the twist, most of them don't even realize it. They're not hiding from you, they're hiding from themselves. Nietzsche once said, every profound spirit needs a mask, but he wasn't insulting anyone. He was warning us, don't confuse the mask with the person. Part 2, the truth in the cracks. Here's what no one tells you. People leak the truth all the time. Not in their words, in the tension, the pauses, the small shifts. They laugh too long at something that isn't funny. They look away for just a second too long. They change the subject when it gets too close to something real. That's why Nietzsche's first truth hits hard. 1, everyone wears a mask, not because they're fake, but because they're scared. Society trains us to mold ourselves into what's acceptable. But masks aren't perfect, they slip. Watch for the tension. That's where the real person starts to show. 2, what someone criticizes in others often reveals what they're hiding in themselves. This is one of Nietzsche's sharpest tools, projection. Someone who constantly mocks arrogance. They're probably insecure about their own worth. Someone obsessed with calling out liars. They may be avoiding a truth they're too afraid to face. We hate in others what we deny in ourselves. So when you want to understand someone, don't just look at what they admire. Look at what they attack and ask yourself why. 3, silence speaks louder than words. Nietzsche didn't believe truth lives in language. In fact, he saw language as a way people avoid truth. Pay attention to the gaps, the hesitation before answering. The short practiced replies to deep questions. The topics they dodge. I don't know. It's nothing. I'm fine. Sometimes silence is the scream they don't know how to let out. 4, loud virtue often hides quiet vanity. Be cautious of those who constantly preach purity, correction, morality. According to Nietzsche, this is often the will to power in disguise. The louder the virtue signal, the more likely there's something hiding behind it. True goodness doesn't need a stage, it doesn't need applause. 5, people lie to themselves before they ever lie to you. This one changes everything. When someone says, I'm fine, I'm over it, I don't care, they're not lying to hurt you. They're lying because they've rehearsed it so many times they've convinced themselves it's true. Nietzsche didn't see this as evil, he saw it as survival. In a painful world, self-deception is how we cope. And here's the key. When their story doesn't quite add up, it's not always manipulation. It's a window into a deeper truth they're too scared to face. And that's where you start to read between the lines. 6, where someone feels superior, they're hiding deep inferiority. This is pure Nietzsche. People who brag nonstop, who constantly remind you of their status, their power, their wins. They're not trying to impress you. They're trying to silence the voice inside them that says, you're not enough. And people who casually put others down, they're often terrified of being overlooked themselves. Real confidence doesn't need to compete. It just is. So if someone always has to dominate, control, or prove themselves, look behind the mask. you might find a frightened child wearing a crown. This is just the beginning. We've only uncovered 6 of the 18 truths, but as you can see, these aren't just ideas, they're tools. Tools that let you see the invisible, read between the lines, understand people deeply. If you're still watching, good. That means you're ready for part 2, where we'll go even deeper. But before we move on, ask yourself, how many of these truths have you seen before in others, and how many have you seen in yourself? In part 1, we peeled back the mask, revealing the subtle ways people try to protect themselves from the world. Now we go deeper, because once you notice the mask, the real transformation begins when you watch it crack. Have you ever caught someone flinch just for a second when their beliefs were questioned? Or noticed how their voice trembled ever so slightly when a conversation got too close to the truth? That's not weakness, that's revelation. Those aren't mistakes, they're moments. Moments that whisper, here's what I'm really feeling. Because the truth is, people aren't hard to read. They're just terrified of being seen. Nietzsche believed that the self is not a fixed identity. It's a role, a fragile, patched-together performance we adopt to survive a world that demands we be likable, valuable, strong. But here's what he also knew. The moment that performance is threatened, truth starts to leak out. Not just a little, but enough for anyone paying attention to see straight through it. Let's start here with a universal truth. 7. Most actions are driven by unconscious fear. Think about it. Why does someone over-explain every little thing? Why does another person dominate every conversation, never letting a silence settle? Or why does someone vanish completely the moment things get too real? Why do people say yes when everything in their body is screaming, no fear? Not always fear of danger, but fear of being rejected, forgotten, humiliated, unloved. Fear of failure. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of being alone. Nietzsche understood that humans don't act from pure desire, we act to avoid pain. We act to protect our place in the tribe, to shield our egos, to maintain the image we've spent years building. So the next time you're trying to understand someone, stop asking what do they want. Instead ask, what are they afraid of losing? That's where the truth is hiding. 8. When someone criticizes too much, it's projection. Have you ever met someone who seems to critique everything around them? They mock people for being too sensitive. They tear down others for being fake. They roll their eyes at anyone who expresses emotion. At first, it might sound like confidence, but really it's a mirror. That man mocking emotional people, he might be terrified of his own vulnerability. That woman who scoffs at others' appearances, she could be battling the voice in her head that tells her she's not enough. Nietzsche said it clearly. Judgment is rarely about the other person. It's almost always about ourselves. So next time someone won't stop criticizing others, don't focus on their words. Trace it back to them. What part of themselves are they trying to reject? Because projection isn't just defense, it's confession. If you listen closely, it reveals exactly where someone's pain lives. 9. Guilt hides behind false confidence. You've seen them, the ones who walk into a room like they own it, always in control, always prepared, never a hair out of place. But watch closely. Notice the clenched jaw, the overly structured answers, the tiny signs of pressure they try so hard to bury. Nietzsche observed this again and again in leaders, teachers, even spiritual figures. People who perform certainty with theatrical precision, not because they're fearless, but because they're afraid of being exposed. Real peace doesn't need to perform. So when someone seems too confident, ask yourself, what are they trying to prove wrong? What guilt are they trying to bury beneath that polished image? Maybe they regret a mistake. Maybe they're haunted by a version of themselves they're desperate to forget. So don't be intimidated. Be curious. 10. People betray themselves through exaggeration. This one is subtle, but once you learn to spot it, it's everywhere. The person who loudly declares, I don't care what anyone thinks, usually cares deeply. The one who constantly says, I'm always happy, might be fighting to stay afloat. Why? Because exaggeration is the ego's megaphone trying to drown out its own doubt. Nietzsche believed that any extreme, no matter how positive it sounds, is often a sign of imbalance, not strength. So when someone speaks in absolutes, always, never completely, don't take the words at face value. Read the insecurity underneath. Exaggeration is like turning up the volume. The real question is, what are they trying to silence? 11. The desire for control masks inner chaos. We all crave a little control that's normal, but for some people it becomes an obsession. They micromanage every detail of their job. They dominate every decision in a relationship. They follow routines with a near military rigidity. On the surface, it looks like discipline, but underneath it's often a storm they're trying to hold back. Nietzsche understood that the more chaotic someone feels inside, the more desperately they'll try to create structure on the outside. Control is their anchor, their way of saying, if I can just manage everything out here, maybe the mess in here won't consume me. But of course it doesn't work. The more they grip, the more life slips through their fingers. And if you pay attention, you'll see the fear behind the order. Because true peace doesn't need to control, it simply trusts. These aren't just theories. They're lenses, ways to see beneath the mask into the motives people don't even realize they're hiding. And once you see it, you begin to notice most people aren't cruel. They're afraid, they're performing, they're trying to survive. And the more clearly you understand that, the less judgment you carry and the more compassion you can give. So if you've ever wished you could see what's really going on beneath the surface, stick with me, because part 3 will take you even deeper to the moments people reveal everything without realizing it. By now, you're probably starting to feel it, the shift. You don't just hear what people say, you see what's underneath. You walk into a room and suddenly, the silence, the tone, the posture, they all speak louder than words. You see someone interrupt constantly, and instead of being annoyed, you understand they're terrified of being forgotten. You hear someone bragging endlessly, and instead of rolling your eyes, you recognize the wound behind their need to be seen. You're not reading minds, you're reading masks, and Nietzsche handed you the flashlight. But this final part goes even deeper, because behind every behavior is a belief, and behind every belief is a wound. Now it's time to look beneath the mask, not just to see what people show, but to uncover why they wear it in the first place. 11. Those who seek control often fear inner chaos. Control freaks, perfectionists, micromanagers. We've all met them. Maybe we've even been them. They seem powerful, in charge, laser-focused. But Nietzsche saw the truth. Control on the outside often hides chaos on the inside. When someone micromanages every detail, when they panic at the slightest change, when they dominate every decision and struggle to let go, it's not strength, it's survival. They aren't trying to control others because they're strong. They're doing it because they're scared that if they don't control everything, everything will collapse. The stricter the outer shell, the more fragile the inner self. Their obsession with control isn't a sign of power. It's a cry from the inside, a whisper saying, if I stop performing, if I drop the act, what will be left of me? Nietzsche saw performance as a costume, a polished surface stretched over emptiness. And that emptiness, it's what we fear others will see. 12. The louder the performance, the emptier the core. Social media made this one impossible to ignore. Scroll through your feed, perfectly posed photos, curated personas, endless updates, nonstop, look at me energy. At first glance, it might look like confidence, but Nietzsche didn't see it that way. He saw it as desperation. When someone performs that loudly, when every aspect of their life feels staged, it's not because they feel seen. It's because they don't. They fear that if they aren't loud, bright, funny, or flawless, they'll disappear. So they create noise. They create drama. They create a version of themselves, hoping it will be enough. But someone who truly knows who they are, they don't need an audience. They don't need to be watched. Because wholeness is quiet. Only emptiness screams. So when a life looks like a performance, remember, it's not power on display. It's need. This is when it really hits you. The world starts to look different. Because suddenly every moment becomes a clue. Every reaction, every silence, every exaggeration starts telling a deeper story. You're no longer hearing just words, you're listening between the lines. You're no longer frustrated by people, you're understanding them. And this is what Nietzsche wanted, not for you to manipulate, not for you to judge, but to connect, to see people not as villains or victims, but as humans hiding behind carefully built walls they didn't even choose. And now we strip away the final layer. 13. No one speaks from logic, they speak from pain. Think of someone who tells you, I don't believe in love. It's just a fantasy. It sounds logical, rational, thought out. But listen closely. That's not a belief. That's a wound. They're not explaining a theory. They're protecting a scar. Nietzsche believed that behind every rigid belief, every rational stance, is a past experience they never want to repeat. We think people form opinions based on reason, but most of the time they form them based on hurt and justify them later with logic. So when you hear someone's worldview, don't just ask, why do they believe that? Ask what broke them, what scared them, what don't they ever want to feel again? This simple shift changes everything. You stop feeling attacked by their opinions. You start seeing their defenses. You stop reacting. You start understanding. 14. How someone reacts to weakness reveals their true power. Want to know someone's true character? Don't watch how they treat those in power. Watch how they treat the ones who can't fight back. Nietzsche believed real strength doesn't show up in domination. It shows up in restraint. If someone mocks vulnerability, they're afraid of their own. If someone punishes small mistakes, they were probably never allowed to make any. If someone wins by making others feel small, they're still fighting old battles inside. But the person who sees weakness and doesn't pounce, the one who stays listens, forgives when they could condemn, that person isn't weak. That person has already won the inner war. So when you really want to read someone, give them a moment where compassion is an option. What they do in that moment will tell you exactly who they are, not who they pretend to be. If you're still here, it means something has shifted inside you. You're no longer just seeing people. You're reading them, not to gain leverage, not to judge, but to understand and maybe even forgive. Nietzsche didn't give us these insights so we could pull people apart. He gave them to us so we could finally see each other clearly. But we're not done. There are 4 more truths that reveal the final layer, the childhood scars that explain why people chase attention, stay silent, or fight so hard to be remembered. Behind every mask is a soul. Let's finish this journey together. In the last segment, we explored how pain hides behind performance, how beliefs are often shields for old wounds, and how strength isn't domination, it's compassion. Now we strip away the final veil. Because behind the need for attention, behind envy, behind every repeated behavior, is a child, one who never felt fully safe, and who learned to survive by becoming someone else. These next truths will not only help you understand others, they might explain you. 15. When someone fears being forgotten, they chase attention. You know the type. They light up every room. They tell story after story, exaggerating the details. Their outfits sparkle, their laughter echoes, their presence demands to be noticed. At first glance, you might think, wow, they're confident. But Nietzsche saw something else: fear. Not a fear of failure, a fear of erasure, the fear of living and dying without ever leaving a mark. People don't always create noise because they love the spotlight. They create noise because they can't bear the silence. The child who was ignored becomes the adult who performs not for joy, but for survival. And instead of asking for love directly, they chase it sideways through drama, through chaos, through being too much. So next time you meet someone who overwhelms the room, don't be too quick to judge. Ask yourself, what are they afraid will happen if they're not enough? Because sometimes attention-seeking isn't vanity, it's a cry for love. 16. The person they attack is often the person they envy. This truth is hard to admit, but Nietzsche didn't shy away from it. People don't always attack out of hatred. They often attack out of admiration, admiration that feels too painful to express. Criticism is easier than confession. The person who mocks someone's success might be mourning their own missed chances. The one who ridicules confidence may have lost touch with their own. The one who gossips about someone free-spirited might feel shackled by their own unexpressed dreams. It hurts to watch someone live the life you didn't believe you could have. So instead of celebrating them, we destroy them. But envy is just unspoken desire. It's your soul whispering, I want that too, but I don't believe I'm allowed. If you can see this in others, you'll stop taking petty hate personally. If you can see it in yourself, you'll stop living small. Because once envy becomes awareness, it becomes freedom. 17. People act out their childhood, not their beliefs. You've heard it before. People don't change. Nietzsche would say, people don't change, they repeat. They repeat the roles they were assigned, the fears they were taught to carry, the scripts they never had the tools to rewrite. The child who was never heard becomes the adult who never listens. The one punished for expressing emotion becomes cold, logical, emotionally distant. The child who had to earn love becomes the adult who performs for it again and again, even when the love is toxic. They think they're acting from beliefs, but really they're reenacting memories, old dynamics, painful echoes. So when you want to understand someone, don't just ask who they are now. Ask, who did they have to become to survive? Because behavior is biography. And behind every adult is a child still waiting to feel safe. 18, their patterns are a confession. This is the final truth, and it changes everything. People don't always say what hurts, but they'll show you again and again through patterns. The one who ghosts when things get close. They're saying, I don't know how to be vulnerable. The one who overworks themselves to the point of exhaustion. They're saying, if I stop, I'll have to feel. The one who flirts with everyone but connects with no one. They're saying, I've been hurt where it mattered most and I'm scared to go there again. These aren't random quirks. They're confessions. They say, this is where I was wounded. This is how I survive. This is what I fear repeating. Nietzsche believed that if you learn to truly listen, not just to words, but to patterns, you'll hear the truth before it's ever spoken. And when you do, something powerful happens. You stop personalizing. You stop judging. You start understanding. You stop being a weapon. You become a mirror. And that, more than any tactic, strategy, or trick, is what makes you truly powerful. Because you're not just reading people, you're remembering yourself. Take a moment, breathe, reflect. Every single truth we've explored was never just about them. It was also about you, your fears, your childhood roles, your defense mechanisms, your longing to be seen, heard, loved without performing. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of a new way of seeing. Nietzsche didn't teach us how to observe others so we could judge them. He wanted us to awaken, to realize that what we judge in others is often what we're hiding in ourselves. What we admire in others is what we're longing to reclaim. So if this video made you feel seen, if it helped you recognize a pattern in someone else or in yourself, don't keep it to yourself. Comment below. Which of these 18 truths hit you the hardest? Let's build a space where honesty is stronger than performance, where seeing clearly doesn't make us cold, it makes us compassionate. And if this spoke to you, subscribe, because this is just the beginning of learning to see what's hidden and becoming who you truly are.